Hey, this is Ralph, and in this video I want to continue working on managing some debt with Excel. So in my last video, we figured out what our weighted average was going to be for multiple sources of debt with varying interest rates. So a weighted average calculation. That came in handy. And let me change some of my numbers here so they look a little bit, I'll put $6,000 of debt on credit card 1. I'll keep the others there at 8%. So I've got 30,000 student loans, 6 on credit card 1, 6 on credit card 2, 15,000 for a home equity line of credit. So a total of $59,000 of debt with a weighted average interest rate of 7.8%. Now let's do a couple more basic math operations here. I'm going to make these columns just a bit smaller just to give myself some more room. Change my labels just a little bit. And I'm going to line these over to the right just so they look a little neater. And let's also do this. I'm going to put in the min payment. Okay. Now, different sources of debt are going to have different ways of calculating a minimum payment. For instance, if you have a fixed term loan, let's say it's a 15-year loan or a 30-year loan, kind of like a mortgage, then you're not going to be paying the minimum. You're going to be paying some amount that would get that balance to zero. And that's what we would use a loan amortization chart for. But let's say it's something like credit cards or even student loans for that matter, but definitely credit cards where you can pay a minimum and just extend it out. And this is where you can keep track of what are your minimums. So your student loan could very well be a fixed amount, kind of like a mortgage where you have to pay some amount in order to pay it off. So let's kind of see what that would be using just the information we have available to us. I'm going to do a really quick payment function. So I'm going to take a payment here. I'm going to take my interest rate and I'm going to divide it by 12. Then the number of periods. Now I don't have a cell that lists the number of years, but let's assume for your student loan, let's say it's a 15-year student loan or something like that. Sometimes they're bigger. So I'm just going to go ahead and put in 15 times, there we go, times 12, and that'll get the number of months. See, I'm putting all this in months because minimum payment's going to be a monthly payment. So I've got my interest rate divided by 12 to give me a monthly rate. I've got the number of years times 12 in order to give me the number of months, comma, and then I can simply figure out, okay, well, what's the balance going to be? And at this point, my balance is going to be a negative version of my $30,000 student loan balance. So I'm going to close the parentheses, press enter. So the minimum payment for my student loan to pay it off in 15 years is $237.24. Okay, now if I alter my balance, 2,000, let's do 20,000. Either way, that's going to keep adjusting my minimum payment, which I don't want to have happen because that doesn't happen in real life. So if my minimum payment, if my payment was originally calculated off the starting balance of 30,000, that's what the payment's going to be, and that's what it's going to stay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a Control-C to copy, and I'm going to do a paste special really, and I'm going to paste the values. So what I've just done here is I've removed that payment function, and the only thing I have left now is that minimum payment number. So even as my balance reduces, my minimum payment is still going to be the original calculated payment. Now for credit cards, that's a little bit more of an interesting scenario. So let's say your credit cards are both saying that the minimum payment is 3% of the balance. So I'm going to make a calculation that takes my current balance and multiplies it by 0.03, which is 3%. $180 for one of them, $240 for the other. And for home equity lines of credit, I'm actually a little bit ignorant on these, but I'm going to assume this is also going to be like the credit cards and there's a percentage. So I'll say $450, which is my balance times 3%. So now I have some interesting kind of numbers. I'm going to go ahead and select all of these cells and I'm going to format them. Give myself a little bit more room with the balances since it's necessary. And now I can figure out, all right, what is my total minimum payment? And let me just bold these, and let's keep in mind I've got my total debt, $59,000. I have my weighted average interest rate, and now I have my total minimum payment. So in order to pay off any of this debt, it's going to be about $1,100. Okay, so you might be thinking, well, gee, now that I've got this information, what's that really mean for me? Well, it can mean a lot. Let's do a little experiment here where we focus just on one of our credit cards. How about if we focus on this one right here, the $8,000? In fact, I'm going to go ahead and bold it or I'll change the highlighting there, and let me go and put some borders in just so things are looking a little bit clearer. Okay, I'm going to focus just on this one credit card for a moment. It's my credit card 2. And I'm going to go ahead and put in a split view, or freeze some panes. So that way when I scroll to the right here, we can still see our original source data. And what I'm going to do on the right side of my worksheet is I'm going to create a payoff schedule, also called an amortization schedule, but let's call this a payoff schedule. And I'm going to keep track of a number of pieces of information. I'm going to keep track of the date. I will keep track of my payment. I'm going to keep track of the amount that applied to interest, the amount that applies to principal, and then I'll keep track of the balance. And for these, I will say no borders. There we go. So date, payment, interest, principal, and balance. Okay, now bear with me on this one. Let's go ahead and start this off just a little bit. So what is today? It's April 6th, so I'm going to go ahead and pretend we're starting on May 1st. May 1st, 2011, and then I'll do 6/1/2011. So I got a couple months in there, and I'll just kind of autofill that down just a bit so we can see what's going on. In fact, I will also take these and reduce my font size a bit so it's a little tinier. Now for payment, I really want this to be kind of, I want this to change. I want to pretend that we're only going to pay the minimum payment on this, but our minimum payment's going to change time by time. So I'm going to check this out. I'm going to go ahead and put in April 1st up here. That's not the year we want, of course. Get the size there that I want. Make sure we are all at 10. That's good. And I'm going to put in equal to, oops, wrong one, equal to my credit card balance. So my balance starts off at 8 grand. And just to make things a little bit easier on ourselves, I'm going to get rid of the decimals also. And that wasn't disappearing for me. There we go. Okay, so my balance starts off at 8,000. Now my payment here, say I'm going to start this off in May 1st, is going to be equal to the previous balance times 0.03. And there's my first payment. Fantastic. Now the interest charged is going to be equal to my previous balance times the interest rate on the credit card, which is in my cell C4. I'm going to make this absolute because all of my interest calculations are going to refer to cell C4. So that's absolute. I'm dividing this by 12. Okay, because the interest charged for a particular month of your credit card debt is a monthly version of the annual interest rate for the credit card. So it'll be my outstanding balance times my annual interest rate divided by 12. So when I pay $240, $120 of that is going to go towards interest. Principal is going to be the amount of my payment minus the amount that applied to interest. The rest goes to principal, which reduces my overall debt. So my balance after I make that $240 payment is going to be my previous balance minus the amount applied to principal. Oops, made a little mistake there, didn't I? Let's try this again. Equals previous balance minus the amount applied to principal. So although you paid $240, you didn't reduce your debt by $240, you only reduced it by $120. Now, since you've taken care of this first row, the other rows are going to be a little bit easier. Check this out. I should be able to go I could do this one column at a time, or I could do all 4 columns at once, and I'm going to autofill down just by double-clicking. Then I'll go to my next 3 cells here, and I'll just double-click the fill handle. And now we start to get some information that we start off paying $240 because that's 3% of the outstanding balance. And then our payments drop each time because we're only paying the minimum. And really what you're looking for is you're looking for the time in which your balance gets to 0. As you can see right now, that you're pretty much paying on this credit card for a year. Your balance has gone from $8,000 down to about $66.73. So if I go ahead and select a couple rows and I start to autofill down, I'm just going to keep on autofilling and then I'll let go and see what's happening. I still owe $4,300. Let me keep going. Still owe $2,600. Keep on going. Still owe $1,700. Keep on going. $1,600. Keep on going. Oh, this is depressing, isn't it? Keep on moving down there. Now finally we're getting to an interesting point here. Let's see. We started this whole process in April of 2011. It's now 12 years in the future, or 11 years in the future. It's October 2022, and we still owe almost $1,000 on that credit card. Now, this is, by the way, if you're just paying the minimum monthly payments. Now, at some point, the minimums are going to get so low that it's just silly, and you might get to a point to where you have to pay at least, let's say, sometimes a credit card might say $10 is the minimum. So it'll be a flat rate, $10, or the calculated minimum. So that's something to keep in mind too. So what I'm going to do here is, instead of putting in a calculation for this one that's $30, let's assume that $30 is the guaranteed minimum. So I'll just type in a 30 right there. And I'll just type in a 31 right there just for benefit. Actually, nope. Let me just autofill this last one down. But my dates aren't working right, so I'll use my autofill options, and I'm going to fill months. That's an option just off the recorder here. Fill months. There we go. So now we see things getting a little bit more specific. Let me just autofill down a little bit more. Oh gosh, it's still trucking along. Still going. Still going. Oh, finally, we're almost done. Close enough. Okay, so what we've really learned here with Excel is that on this one credit card, $8,000 balance, if you pay only the minimum payment, you're not going to pay that thing off until 2026. What does that really mean for us? Let's check this out, okay? How long will that take you to pay off? Let's see. Time to pay off credit card 2. I'm going to take equals the max of all the dates. So I've got the max of all the dates, and I'm going to subtract today. Okay, so bear with me here. So I'm basically taking my payoff date minus today's date. I'm going to surround that with parentheses, and I'm going to divide it by 365.25 for the number of days in a year, 365 and 1/4. The result is it's going to take me 15.3 years to pay off that credit card if I just pay the minimum. Scary stuff, huh?